All right. Well, had a little bit of technical difficulties, as they say, but I think we're all ready now. So, for those of you who don't know, OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, is something that streamers use, and it updates, and doesn't tell you it updates, and next thing you know, you're wondering why things are all screwy. But it's all good now. About to continue on with this Orlock gang. Get this music down to a reasonable volume. So these are the two guys I've been working on here. I started with a bunch, but I wanted to do some different things. Mostly their blue shirts are kind of coated. They're not finished, but tonight I think I'm going to work on a little bit of leather. And the box art has black leather. Box art has black leather on these. I'm going to put brown on it, and I'm using scale 75 tape paint. I'm going to start with some of this black leather and kind of mix that up with some of the brown leather here to give me a dark base, and just kind of go over all the things that will be leather on them. Get this out of the way. A little later than normal tonight on the East Coast here, but I figured jump on, get an hour done. Hopefully if you're up late, you can, or early, wherever you are, you can jump on and get some things done. Put this black leather right here. I've only been painting 2 of these on camera because after the first one I got a couple of comments about it being they would rather see a lot more go on than just painting a blue shirt. Understandable. So I usually let one go and dry after when I start the other one, and just kind of work back and forth off of each other. I'm going to go ahead and put some of this orange leather on, because in a minute we'll add that to our base color and start to highlight up a little bit. Get our base in here. As always, I'm going to use a bigger brush here in the beginning, unless I need to get in there and do something tighter. I'm going to readjust this camera real quick here. There we go. I'll try to keep this stuff where you can see it as well. But I know you mostly want to see the miniature. Music's by Daniel Denaro. He's Italian. His SoundCloud cloud is listed below. Very grateful to him for letting me use his music. It's good background stuff. So again, I'm going to take some of this black leather and going to kind of mix it in with some of this brown leather. And I'm going to do mostly their jackets, maybe their boots and gloves as well, but mostly their jackets right now while I decide whether these guys would be the kind of guys that would mix leather or not. And I'm going to go right over the top of all this stuff. And it's hitting my zenithal highlight, but taking it out. But it's going to be pretty easy to figure out where the highlights were on this anyway. I even go over this little bracket part here that's going to be metal later on, because I do not want any gray showing up as I work on these. This guy's got a satchel here, assuming some sort of laptop. Probably doesn't get too many days off. He's got to work during the daytime in those mines. But I'll make that leather probably a different colored leather, so no big deal. Volume turned up a little bit for you there. Be sure all this back here is going to be leather as well. It's okay if I get some even on this black part of his shoulder pads here too. Give everything a good coat here. Make sure I don't have any gray of that primer showing anymore. I zenithal primed these, which means basically took black paint first, went over the whole thing, and then worked to the gray color by spraying white ink over top. Also has these leather pouches on his chest here. Should probably go ahead and do that. One of these colors, but again, I don't want it to be the exact same color as his vest. I'm gonna wear and tear this vest up a little bit here. This thin. My wet palette is thinning this paint, but this stuff is actually drying a lot faster than usually it does. Scale 75 has that gel medium, which will make it tend to hang around and let you wet blend a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and hit that leather right now, even though later it's going to be a different color. I'm going to go ahead and show it off a little bit so I can pick it out a little while easier. Some spots I'm definitely going to have to work to get in here. I don't mind touching the shoulder pad as much as I do touching the face, although the face isn't finished either. Sometime here I'll go back over that and finish highlighting up. It's okay, I'm not going to finish the skin before I get all these tight areas around his head. Alright, it's not bad for that guy. Can't decide if I'm going to go in on those boots or not. I mean, my wife says that the boots have to match the jacket, but I don't know that he's all that worried about fashion at this moment. Get my mix here. Just gonna lift out of that brown. Even if his jacket is slightly different than his buddy's, that's gonna be okay too. Get this guy going too. I haven't wiped any of this paint off because I don't want to wipe this paint off and thin it out because it's a base coat right now. So I just put this on the model and then I'll take time to make sure I go ahead and spread it all out across here so I don't lose any detail. Thrown on him. Also got asked while ago after the other video came out how I can stand having this mic in front of me, and it doesn't really bother me. I have 3 kids. One is 2, about to be 3, and little girl, that's the little girl. I got a little boy that's 4, about to be 5 in October. Another one that's 8, just turned 8. And when they're in the room or near the room, this mic will pick them up every little sound. So it's okay, I get right up on it and get the also get the gain turned down so that it doesn't pick up every word. Guy's jacket is right there. He's got the same, he's got a slightly different belt coming across his chest, but again, I'm going to go ahead and hit it now so I can see later that I'll need to make it a different color. Or maybe leave it a little darker in there as I lighten up the jacket. He's got some grenades or ammunition or whatever bandolier on. But while his skin is not completed, That's what I'm going to make sure I get in there and knock out that gray area. Let's see how those guys are looking. Not too bad. Some areas will take a little bit more than others, highlight wise. See a couple of spots now that I go back and look at it where I need to get paint back in there. Gonna move that guy off camera there. Not sure these guys are, whether they're any good or not, but kind of like the look they had. Get some more of this paint. Again, this is scale 75 paint. Right now I am using a combination of brown leather and black leather. If you don't have that, which I guess you might or might not have scale 75, it's good paint, but any brown paint, chocolate brown with a little bit of black in it, will kind of give you the same color too, so it's just not that important to have the exact colors. As I continue to paint different things on this channel, I'll use different kinds of paints on purpose, because I want people to be able to use whatever paint they have. I usually try to stay pretty much in the same range when I'm painting something, but again, that's just a choice to make sure that if somebody did only have one specific kind of paint, that they don't feel left out. I think I am going to go ahead and go chocolate boots on these two, just because these pants are going to be kind of that off gray blue, and I want the padding to be black, so I think I'm going to go ahead and use that as the continuation of the leather. Just realized too that my laptop that I'm streaming on has a well, I didn't realize just now that it has a fan. I've known it has a fan, but at the same time I just realized it wasn't on. So that computer is a little warm right now. Hopefully that didn't cause any issues, but fan's on now. If you're watching, let me know in the comments what you're working on yourself tonight, if you're listening along. Okay, let's get these boots going now. Same deal. Add together. Black leather and brown leather. And we'll get in here pretty tight. I am going to leave the padding on the front of the boots. End up making those a different color, but get up here pretty close. That padding is going to be able to give us a little black in the middle of that. Mix this in a little bit more here. Back. Maybe a little lighter. Kind of playing around a little bit there on the palette, just so it's not the exact same color as going on the jacket, but I also know it's going to be a little bit lighter up there. I think I mentioned in the last video that my bases that I had planned on these guys have turquoise in them, so that's not going to work. This looks a bit gaudy. Jump in there and the whole thing has that almost, or too close at least, to the same color it's in their shirt, so it's a little too much. Go in here and get all these straps and stuff on this guy. I have gone a little bit over into the padding on that. His protective, I don't know, catcher's shin guards he's got on. But that's okay. Alright, well, so you can see this tip of this brush is starting to fray out. It's a good indicator that your tip is drying. You need to just wash everything out of there, and I'm using a water cup off the side here with little ridges in it. Lets me kind of pump the paint out of it. But you can see now it's back to somewhat sharp tip again. These are Hobby Lobby brushes. I got, I don't know, 30 or so for $16 or $19, something like that. It's called a classroom set. Lots of 8s and 6s, and maybe some 10s in there too. Big old honking brushes. My wife will be happy that this guy's boots are going to match his jacket, so good. Okay. So I'm going to keep this in case I have to come back to it here. Show you what I'm going to do with the leather here. So I've got this brown leather. Keep mixing that in. I've got some of this black leather. I'm going to keep mixing it in. And I'm going to keep that handy in case I got to come back to it. But in the meantime, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take some of the brown and some of the black, put it right here. Okay, and it can be, especially because it's leather, it can have some separate some different colors in it. I'm going to start to mix some of this orange leather in as well, and you'll see how fast that turns it kind of a lighter brown, right? So it may need a little bit of each of these in there, yeah, so we don't get quite as stark of a contrast, but when leather gets stressed, that's what happens anyway. So I just make sure I don't hit every single part of the mini that has different there we go, starting to get a little bit more and more. You don't want to run over whatever you've had before, but in other words, you don't want to just get, I don't want to make this entire pile of paint on my wet palette the highlight color now, because later, well, two reasons. One, I'm going to have to go in later and do the other ones that I'm still painting, but I also have these that I'll need to kind of go back and touch up if I hit some areas. Like I can tell down in the this guy's down at the bottom here, his hood, or behind his collar, he's going to need some dark again, so I'll go back into that dark paint and skillfully, without touching his head, try to get in there pretty deep. But I can go, even without cleaning out my brush there, I can go to this lighter brown and really just start to look at these higher edges and start to get those guys to stick out a little bit more, for sure, on the top of his collar here. Also going to make sure that I hit whatever I've missed. Mostly want to hit anything that's upturned. And I don't want to go all the way into the creases. I can also get along the edges. Now I also know that I'm going to end up going a lot lighter, so it's not terribly disconcerting if I hit an area too much. If it does hit a every now and then hit a crease or something it's not supposed to, that's okay. As this paint gets thinner, I'm going to show you here on this napkin here. As this paint gets thinner off of my wet palette, I will from time to time touch it so that whatever extra moisture is on this brush is going to kind of roll out of it. You noticed, maybe you could see this, but when I touched it a minute ago, it kind of ran down, and I want to make sure as much as possible that doesn't happen. So with bigger brushes like this, it has a big size belly in it, so I don't want it to become a sloppy mess. And instead, I would like to kind of keep pushing up on that. This stuff being Scale 75 paints will separate right before your eyes on the on a wet palette. It's almost like an oil paint, to be honest with you. Alright, so again I'm going to go back into this darker color of my leather. I'm just going to kind of go back into the creases and just kind of touch and take those back down a little bit just so we get some contrast back in this model. Okay. I'm not going to ever be afraid to do that, to go back in and darken up too. Sometimes you start highlighting and you lose all the bit of darkness that you had before. So sometimes you got to lay back in the shadows instead of adding. Yeah, so that paint's getting kind of thick in my brush, so I'm going to touch that paper towel, get a lot of it out, make sure the tip is good, and go back in. The stuff that's down in the shadows of this shoulder pad, even though I'm hitting the shoulder pad area, I'm not gonna freak out about that because I'd rather it be a dark color than a light color. So the more that gray shows through, the more problems I could theoretically have. I'm hitting the weapon right now. It's really a sloppy phase of what you're doing when you're base coating. Trying to keep that dark. Look back here at his boots now, which I'm going to have to do the other guy's boots too here in a second. I'll give them a second coat. Doesn't matter if I hit the base because this isn't the base they're going to end up on. It's just got a little bit of super glue holding these guys accountable, as they say. This color change going here. Now that that's had a chance to dry a little bit, I can keep going and go a little bit lighter on top of what we were working on before. Top of his collar. Guys, you guys gotta yell at me when I get off camera like that. Might even come in a little bit with that black leather and really give it some definition here. Let's see here. this? How's the cam going here? All right, here we go. Nobody probably really wants to look at my ugly face, but that's all I got. Dry again. So I'm going to start to hit part of the highlights without touching anything. Really start to see some of these boots show up and different parts of leather now that I'll get 3 and 4 layers on. And just like the skin the other day, just going to remember that things are going to dry down. So whatever looks a little bit too much will eventually be okay. Just want to really, when you're talking about contrast in a mini, just really want some really light colors right next to really dark colors. Which sounds pretty simplistic, but just remind yourself of that as you're trying to paint things that you want minis that move pretty fast up that scale. If you have wrinkles and things like that anyway. Okay. Like it dries a little bit, I'm going to do the same thing, kind of repeat the same thing over here. I never started on this guy's boots. Pretty sure most of these boots here are shin guard actions. I can see them a little bit better on this. So I'm going to kind of leave that where I can see it a little better on this one. It's not a big deal that I did that on the other one, because I'll go over it with darker paint anyway, because eventually that's what it's going to be. You can see that I'm going on pretty heavy with this chocolate stuff with this one. This guy's like, I don't know, GW bikers. Man, if you're like me, when you begin this stuff and you start to get 3 or 4 different colors on models, it just kind of gives me a reason to continue, as they say. Gonna need some more paint very soon, I believe. As I continue this, I can see that even varying stages of how much paint I've put in here, or how much of each color I put in here, kind of gives these leather jackets different looks anyway. So I don't know if you can see this, but you know, this guy on the right here, his jacket is definitely darker. As I highlight up, it might change it a little bit, but just gives them enough of a resemblance to where they, you know, they're definitely from the same gang, but may give a couple of them some black boots and gloves and that kind of stuff too. But we can also change their shoulder pads up enough to where they look like they're definitely different. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit more paint right now, especially the brown leather and the black leather, and see how this comes out. Sometimes they, it's still fine. Sometimes they'll separate in the bottles while I'm standing around, but doesn't look like they've done that yet on these. Start to bring some of that orange leather back in. because it will retain its tip, and it'll also kind of give me a smooth flow out of there. Okay. So that's the darkest that I used here a while ago, and I'm gonna go back into it a couple times and make sure it sets apart those folds in the leather. So hopefully you can see that. Go back up here and underneath the lip of what I got before. I did leave one highlight there in between on that fold, but I'm also going to start to get a little bit lighter on this too. Right, so I got some of that orange again, and let's see, I don't think I need to wipe it off yet. So the edge doesn't have to be highlighted. I guess I would really try that just in the dark area. I don't know. Okay, so I'm actually going to get that and then show you here. I'm going to go all the way into this black leather I had over here in the original mix and draw some of that out. Pill of water right there. But that is the darkest shadow that I'm going to use. I'm just going to go with a really thin, wispy kind of edge. Go in there in the really deepest recesses and throw that back down. Got to be careful that it doesn't have too much paint in it, and the ferrule especially. Well, if it gets up in the ferrule, the whole brush can be lost. Okay, so I'm going to go under this collar right here. He's got a giant crease in there. The more areas I can crop that in next to highlights, the better, because it's going to accentuate all of that. But by mixing the brown and the black brown in the beginning, instead of just starting with this black brown and building up, it actually leaves me a place to go. It's not unlike starting to paint black. If I start to paint black, then if you start with black, you don't have anywhere to go for shade. So if you just mix just a little bit of blue or green or gray or whatever in, I wouldn't recommend that much gray, but it does leave me somewhere to go with that. This. Let's go down here on the boots and play around a little bit. So I said, I believe all of that is shin guard in front of this little paint stroke right here. So go back in there get around the shin guards. This little place on his boot right here, you can see the lip. In front of that needs to be shadow. Okay. Maybe around this lip of the back of the boot right here. And we're going to go in here with the black leather. You know what I'm going to do? I need to get rid of this, you can't see this, but there's a little bit of pool of water right here, so I'm just going to take this Q-tip and get rid of that. Hazards of using the wet palette. Speaking of wet palette, may need to replenish here in a second with water. Okay, going back in with my black leather. Go between some of these highlights I had a minute ago. See, I have a little speck. See right there. A little speck down in there of gray showing. That's the kind of stuff that'll break up your miniature and keep you from suspending disbelief. Okay, not going too bad there. He does have this other deal in there. Let's come back to our other guy here for just a second. That other guy has a little belt in there I need to really kind of keep an eye on. Let's go a little lighter. Next couple of phases of this guy's stuff here. Get some highlights on his boots here. And here. Start to put some jacket folds, highlights. I move pretty fast with these boots here. Paint dries up too fast on the palette. Probably work on skin a little bit more later. In the next couple of episodes. Go right into this kind of mid highlight area. It's not really mid-tone, that was probably a little higher. But I'm going to go here for this guy's boots. put a little bit of, from time to time using these scale 75 paints, a little bit of flow improver in them. If they start sticking to your brush too much, that's an idea. Flow aid is Liquitex, but one thing I don't like is if they start running off of your brush. I just don't like that, so just got to do that sparingly if you do that. Back to the darker part below, the bottom half of these folds in his leather cloth. Probably will end up having black bands underneath that. Leather bandolier on his shirt. Go under these shoulder pad areas and really give it a good defining line underneath that. If you're listening along, Daniel Denaro has graciously allowed us to use his music. He has a SoundCloud that is linked in the description. Go on and purchase some tracks from him. Very peaceful to paint to that. We're over an hour here, and I'm probably going to start to wind down. But see here as I start to go further and further toward the edges of these folds in his leather. I'm getting really, really bright. Also need to come back in here on the toe. Just highlight that front of that boot. It's basically 3 colors so far, just kind of using random looks of different leather all over the jacket. Anything on the edges is probably going to have a little bit more of this random stressing. A little bit lighter. Make it more realistic. You know, when I first started doing things, I always had to have every color from every line, and was fortunate enough to have some interest from a couple of paint companies, and reached out and got some. An old channel. Got some full sets of paint, but as I get more and more experienced, the more I like to just hang out with, like, you know, I'll have a general direction that I want to go in a paint with a paint, but I will do my best to just use primarily one color. And then mix colors into that color to give me some different looks there. And do a little bit more on this guy's. I'll leave that guy. You can see. Where I got to whatever color. To be too different, but slight variations in this leathery look. We're going to end up going even higher than this, but right now you can see that just the subtle changes in the leather just toward the edges, right toward the edges, I want it to get really bright. So sometimes that takes it 3 or 4 layers to get there. Sorry again if you were on earlier and got suckered into a ready to go live scene, and then I realized OBS had been updated. Hope you were able to jump back on, but even if most people aren't watching it live, it's okay. It'll be here when you're ready. I'm going to go straight into this orange leather over here and just try to see if I can just touch a little bit of stressed leather out of there. Beautiful. Yes, nice. Like painting leather. Really can't go wrong doing it. Stressed leather has so many different directions it can go. Shouldn't scare you at all. Just play around until you see it. And if you Google leather, you would see how many different ways it ends up getting. Random stretch marks and colors into it. And may play around with some different colors of leather as I continue on these guys. Okay. Honestly, probably need some more water in the wet palette as I make a mess. But you can't see it because it's off camera. Okay, up here you can see I kind of got a little too happy with the highlight. So I'm going to go in here and get some of this black leather. The shape of my brush tip back where I want it. And then come in here and go between. Just like that. It's back. Alright, highlight the boots and then I'm out. Okay, a little more brown. Right in the middle here. Can I get that going with the orange? Orange leather. Down here. Can't be afraid to make a mess here. Alright, I don't tend to like to stir paint up on my wet palette with the best brushes that I have, but go back down here again. Alright, here we go, boots. This guy's got hella calves. I mean, he's got them big, thick wrists too, so. See those guys? Got some boots going on. Get in here on his toe. Add a little bit of, goes too high, it's no big deal. I'll actually dry down like I said, and boot toe of this one. The place I don't like is right here. It's just gonna go into the mid-tone a little bit more there. Constantly inspect. Looks like this is part of the part of his satchel, so that won't have to be the same color later anyway. Do that in a darker leather, or I don't know, maybe a burlap, although it looks kind of more like a tight leather thing than a burlap thing, so maybe a lighter leather? I don't know. We will cross that proverbial bridge when we arrive. Okay, well, one more go at the highlights on this guy's boots. Just gonna go inside of the last highlight, and I go a little bit brighter in here. The layer starts to thicken up. Just give me an idea of lighter leather. See the top of this collar here too. I'm actually gonna really go pretty high on that, because in all miniatures you want the head to be one of the focal points, and so you want constantly to draw that attention upwards toward that spot. There you go, so you can see that whole part of leather I just hit there on the boot, because I want there to be a lot of contrast in the boots. Alright guys, that's leather. Gonna work on the other guys for a little while too tomorrow, and be able to move on a little bit higher and maybe throw some scratches in there at the end. See if we can give this stuff. Next time I'll work also on more of the skin tones, and see if we can start to bring those faces out a little bit more. But I like where it's headed. Thanks for watching.